what is it, what kind of work constitute the majority of your output?
For sure, I would say that my work is really revolving around making content for businesses and just doing corporate content. That's where you get the money, and sometimes you use that money to fund your own projects. But it's difficult. I think at this stage, it's still difficult to say that you can make a living as a filmmaker.
Right. You say your own projects, so that means that your own projects are different from the majority of the work that you're getting now, right? Commissioned for. So if you wanted to do your own project now, how difficult or how easy would that be in the current climate?
I think people are really welcoming any type of storytelling that really reflects what they're about. And so my journey started in documentary filmmaking. And I think the work of a documentary filmmaker is very different from someone doing fiction. But still, you still need a minimum. You still need to know what you're doing. You still need to have access to equipment or having a crew with you. But sometimes the kind of budget that you're working with doesn't allow you to have big crews and everything. So I think it really helps for you to have knowledge in a bit in everything. So I think in everything that I have been doing, I have been filming myself, editing myself, interviewing people myself. In case of translation, with having French as a first language, doing subtitles myself, all these things. Right. And I think when you build your reputation, that's when you can have bigger projects and working with contractors. But you're right when you're saying that personal projects can be very different from commissions. And so when I was still living in the UK, I did a documentary about black women and their natural hair. And then what actually brought me to Rwanda was the idea of doing a documentary about Rwandans who lived abroad and coming back to the country. And so I started this project 5 years ago. It's been long. And I think I've been shying away from it because it's been personal as well. I think I never realized how much I would be learning by coming here. I came here because I wanted to continue the project, but quickly came the questions of how I'm going to pay rent and how I'm going to make a living. But yeah, it's still something that I am working on. And because it's a documentary as opposed to fiction, I think it is acceptable to have it a bit raw in the sense that I don't think in terms of production, the expectation is the same. So sure. I think it's fine having something a bit raw, but you still have a minimum to reach out.
Right. I mean, you mentioned sort of having to do everything or having to have a knowledge of doing everything. So you can film, you can edit, you can do your own subtitles, you can do the whole thing. But what do you think would have to happen within the industry in Rwanda for you to be alleviated of having to do some of those things? So in order for you to be able to afford a capable team, in order for you to be able to make the sort of personal project that you would want to do, what do you think would have to happen? So if you could just have the Rwanda Film Office's air, or if you could just have potential investors' air, what would be your main demand, I suppose?
Well, I think for any content creator or filmmaker, it really has to start with yourself. It really has to start with the story that you want to tell. I don't think it starts with having a perfect knowledge of how you use the equipment. It really starts with the story. And then by understanding what your story is about, that's how you learn how to utilize that equipment to tell your story. Right. Because I don't think when I have a camera, I understand the functionality of each button. I don't. I just know how I would like to say it and how I'm going to use that equipment. So it starts with you, and then in the era of digital media, it's on you to have these stories out there. You need to understand how these social platforms work as well. And then, because I think that what people want to see, they want to see numbers. They need to understand what kind of audience you can get, right, and how you can reach audiences. You really need to be able,
like
to
market yourself.
Exactly, but a bit like an influencer. You need to be able to come and say, this is what I can do. You cannot just say, oh, I'm a filmmaker, this is my hobby, this is what I like doing, this is my purpose. No, you have to be able to prove it.
You need an active portfolio, I suppose you could
Exactly.
say. Right.
And so that's how with yourself. And then I think it goes beyond that. It has to be about, I guess, having a collective of different technicians in the industry.
Right.
I think you really need to have
a network.
But your story has to be discussed with other people. You cannot just be in your own corner and be like, this is my story, this is what I'm going to do. Like, no, you have to be able to confront your ideas with other people, and I think that's how you're going to have quality content and a good narrative.
Sure. So, you know, you mentioned that a lot of your work is sort of corporate commissioned work, and then you have your own personal projects, you know, and I imagine that you would want to do a few more of your own personal projects, but what other sort of challenges do you face as a producer in Rwanda?
I think for now my biggest problem would be how informal the sector is at the moment. So anytime that you need, because you cannot just have everything, you know, because you don't have that kind of access to finance. And so when you want to rent something, it could be just a microphone. And you know, you would like to call that person, but that phone is off. Or you have it and it's just not working, and then you happen to have a gig and then you cannot perform because you just have equipment that just doesn't work.
Sure.
And then it's difficult to know, when you want to hire people, it's difficult to know
the level of professionalism, I suppose.
Yes. Sure. And so, because of course when you're going to ask questions about what they're able to do, they're all going to say, oh, but I can do anything.
Right,
you know?
right. Because we have this idea, just like yourself, of, you know, doing several things on our own, right?
Yes. And so I think there have been many times where I brought some people in some gigs where I thought, in case one person is not doing well, it's going to be okay, but I just want to see if he's rather good in sound or in being a DOP or in editing. Like, I always have to kind of do that. And so I tend to work with the same contractors because now I have an idea of what they can do and how they can contribute to the projects.
Sure, got it.